remember that more often than not, you are the expert in the room. If you're in the room, it means that because you're bringing something to the table.
Welcome to On The Go with Manav. I'm your host, Manav Fortono, and today I'm here with Tonia. Tonia is the Chief Executive of Media at 4 Agency Worldwide. And two interesting facts about her are that she used to play basketball for the England basketball team, the national team, and she is a mother to a 19-month-old baby. One reason why I'm very excited about this conversation today with Tonia is because she started off working at 4 Agency Worldwide, originally called 4 Communications, back in 2006 as a grad. And I would love to know how throughout the past 17 years, she has been able to go through the journey. What was it like? So without further ado, I will let Tonia introduce a bit more about herself and we will take it from there.
Thank you for having me on, Manav. It's a great honour to have the opportunity to speak about my career, my progression at 4. So, as you said, I joined 17 years ago on the graduate scheme. At the time, there were 9 graduates in my cohort, and I was the 5th employee in the media team. We are now 75 people working across all media channels, all media disciplines. We're a team of media strategists, planners, buyers, and we are particularly strong in performance marketing. We have around 35 individuals that specialise in those digital types of activations. And we work across a multitude of sectors, but the main ones that we are particularly strong in are health, real estate, and other lifestyle sectors such as culture, travel, and so forth. So, and we're also making particular inroads in the public sector work because we're on the government roster and we have been for the last year. So that's a bit of background about my team and the people that I represent.
Very exciting stuff. Now, taking you back down the memory lane, let's go back to 2006. Do you remember what your first day was like as a grad?
Yeah, first day, probably more difficult to pinpoint, but I do remember the first week. I do remember being very impressed and looking at the variety and the seniority of people that I was interacting with and thinking everyone was really, really clever. 4 was a startup then. I think 4 was only 5 years old, and it was one of the most successful millennium startups in communication still and considered it an SME. And there was a real energy, and the people, I just found everyone ever so dynamic, really welcoming. And yeah, I just remember thinking that I'd really landed well on my feet by getting a gig at 4. So yeah, that's the kind of the feeling I remember having. And I had no idea what I was doing. And I was also very aware of that. I suddenly became aware of the fact that I didn't have any idea about media planning, buying, or communications, but I was super. I felt like a sponge. I was ready to learn and take it all on. And someone gave me a tip of making sure that I walked around the office at least once a day so that people got to know who I was and just try to make as many connections as possible.
I love that piece of advice. I think as someone who also is very social, I think that piece of advice is definitely also, as 4 is also my first job, I definitely use that as an advantage on why I like to come to the office a lot. It's also because of visibility. People see who you are, even going to the bar, getting the opportunity to talk to a lot of different people. And especially as a grad, I just think network is everything. In the office, that'll also help you to get to know what other teams are doing and in their projects. And you just learn a lot more about what's happening right now.
Yeah, totally. And there's two builds on that. One is if you become known as the connector, the person that hears one thing here or a client challenge that knows someone across the office that might be able to solve it, and you become that glue in between teams or operate in an integrated fashion, which is what 4 is all about. That I think that sets you up really well for success. And the other point about networking and growing your network is you never know where people might end up. I've had colleagues leave, account executives, graduates, that then went on to go into in-house roles, but they remember that personal connection and they say, let's go talk to Tonia. I've got a media problem that I'd like to solve. Yeah, just to echo what you said about the importance of networking. any opportunity, bar, whatever, definitely second that.
Totally agreed. Now, one thing I also wanted to ask is what was your first promotion like? And I'm assuming it was from a grad to an account executive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was like I said, there were 9 of us, and we were by nature quite competitive, and we obviously were constantly comparing each other's progressions and benchmarking ourselves against each other. So the first progression was pretty much a spot on 1 year in, and we were all promoted to account executives, which is quite a fair thing to do at the time when everyone's been given pretty much the same training, same tools. It was the subsequent progressions and promotions that I think are more memorable, because then people pulled away from the pack and progressed at different paces through the agency. The first promotion was expected, I think, but it's the subsequent ones when you make the big jumps from exec to AM to AD, and then on to then you start to challenge yourself in how quickly can you get in between the stages. And yeah, but I think the first one, as I said, was I saw it coming.
Okay, now I actually want to take that question and kind of enhance it in a way and ask, how is it like when you got the title Chief Executive of Media? Do you feel that's now being recent, more memorable?
Yeah, oh, definitely. I've always wanted my boss's job. That's the kind of mentality that I've always had, partly because I respect them and I look up to them, but partly for my own ambition. And so constantly progressing towards that job title of chief executive, it felt like it was what I've been working towards all of this time at Four. And then when the execco was created, and I was promoted onto the execco, it felt appropriate that I would be part of that leadership team for the agency to represent paid media. So whilst I'm thrilled, part of the C-suite, the pinnacle of your career, but I do feel that, again, I felt that it was the right time, because I know that I've got the experience to be able to contribute appropriately at that level.
I love how you said that in a way that it was meant to be, and that, do you believe in that everything happens for a reason?
Gosh, that's quite philosophical, isn't it? No, I do. I believe in that you create your own destiny. I think perhaps on the more kind of, I don't know, emotional, non-work related side, I might think that some things are more meant to be, like I was always meant to be Monty's mother, for example, and things like that. But with regards to my career, I think that opportunities present themselves. There's things that are out of your control, but I think you seizing those opportunities and stepping into being brave to step into certain challenges, I think you are in control of your career progression. You're very much so. But there's always going to be things that happen that you don't have any influence over, but it's how you respond to them, how you step into those, like I said, opportunities that help you carve your career. I think you're totally in control of that. So it wasn't meant to be. I do think that I worked hard at it.
Oh man, that's a very powerful response. I felt that.
And I suppose it is to the detriment to my personal life, for example. So I'm an older mother. I was 38 when I had Monty. So there's things that do give, but I change anything about how I approach that. I'm pleased that I gave so much in order to get to where I am.
That's amazing to hear. Now, throughout the journey, and I'm sure this has been the case with a lot of people, you went from a grad to a chief executive, which is amazing. How do you deal with the imposter syndrome? It's like looking back, do you find it a bit scary that, man, I was a grad at one point and now I'm here, I'm now controlling, or in a way making these big decisions that determines a lot about where the agency is going now and in the future? How does that make you feel?
It's this imposter syndrome it's real, and it's an ongoing process, and it still can catch you off guard. And when you actually feel that, well, like an imposter in the room, and it can come in the strangest of places. And I suppose my advice, and this is what I tell myself, and I would, share that with others, is that take a deep breath and step back and remember that more often than not, you are the expert in the room. If you're in the room, it means that because you're bringing something to the table. And the other thing that I've learned over the years that gets me out of the rut or feeling like an imposter quicker is actually sharing it with someone, sharing that I'm feeling vulnerable with someone. And I mean someone who's a peer or a colleague that I trust, partly because then it gets it out there. You're not standing and you're shying away from it and you're trying to hide it and overcompensate it. You're letting people know, or letting someone you trust know, that you're feeling that way. And more often than not, they build you up and they remind you that you're brilliant and that you have every right to be there, to be part of the decision-making process on some big topics that impact the agency. And I think that's the most important thing, is that don't if you feel like it, share it. But do remember that because you're there, you probably deserve to be there, and you are the expert and your opinion matters.
I like that way of how you said that you would tell yourself, you know what, I know who I am. I am the expert in this field. No one can see through me in a way. I'm the only one who knows what's going on around me. So that self-awareness is really impactful.
Yeah.
And I want to play that now and use that to the next question, which is understanding, again, because everyone knows their own capabilities. And I want to know, what would you say is your one biggest strength and one biggest weakness?
So my one biggest strength is probably, can I split it into two?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What one is more, again, on the work side. I realized quite quickly that I cut through the essence of a client brief quicker than other people. So when a challenge is presented, I realized that was actually one of my strategic strengths and on the job strengths, that I get to the root of the problem at pace, and I can therefore respond much quicker, and I get it a bit faster than others. And then more on more personal side, I think I'm quite resilient. And I think in order to be able to turn up with the right energy to meetings, to show up for your company, for the people that you represent, time and time again, despite what's going on externally or in your personal life. I think that is a big strength of mine, is resilience and recovering from adversities, whatever they might be, and bouncing back. I think that's quite an important thing. Navigating the agency through the pandemic, so things like that. I think the resilience piece is quite key. I'll have a think about the weakness. I want to say the usual of taking too much on and not being selective about the projects that I work on, but that's part that's part of the job, really, isn't it? So getting involved in as many things as possible.
That actually makes me now want to ask you something that I'm going to bring on later on, because it's a topic I'm going to carry on or bring into mind later on, because I kind of now want to go back to, your journey. 17 years is a long time. I'm particularly interested in knowing what one or two memories throughout those 17 years, throughout your time from a grad to a chief executive, would you say stands out very vividly? You can tell this to your kid when in the future, or the grandkids, or anyone, if they asked, if you were just, had to look back, what would it be?
Yeah, I think so. I lost both my parents. In mum more recently, about 2 years ago, and my dad 13 years ago. I think the one that I have this very, as a second generation immigrant coming from Russia, I think I have this particular memory that stands out is them coming to our office in Leicester Square. We were right in the middle of the square, in the square, not in the square, just on the side of the square, but prime London postcode, and there's a photo of me when I was 14 with my parents in front of the building that I then got my first job in, and I remember the pride that they felt when they came to. I must have been account executive or account manager level, and they came into the office and they saw, what I'd achieved, and I sincerely felt their pride in me, and I think that's one of the most memorable moments. I think there's been so many campaigns that I've worked on, so many different clients, and there's brilliant work that we currently do and innovate and different products we launch, annually. So there's lots of things that I'm that stick out as proudest achievements, but that for me was making my parents proud was something that I'll never forget, and that's a memory that I'll never forget.
Wow, that's amazing. And I love how that photo you just described, it took place literally where you had your first job. I mean,
Yeah. And that's what I'd say to Monty. I'll say, look at this photo. Mummy's 14. These are your grandparents who you never met. And then this is the office where I launched my career in media. So, and we can, go back there when I can show him. And I think that's kind of closing that loop like that would be great.
that's one thing I love about photos. You just look back and it's so reassuring to just know how far you've come. And it's just, again, it kind of ties with the whole imposter syndrome thing that it's like, you know what? Look at how far you've made it. Keep going. We're all so proud of you and only onwards and upwards at this point.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, the next question I wanted to kind of tie, and again, I'm kind of trying to bring in all of these things from what we've discussed so far. And now I want to understand if you can pick one, what
Mhm.
is one piece of achievement you'd say you've been really proud of?
Yeah.
One achievement.
It's the higher up the ranks you progress, less I think you celebrate your own achievements, and your achievements become the achievements of your team and the achievements of your juniors. Um, and I take particular pride in training a lot of talented people that have gone on, because I really care about people's progressions, and I get involved on a very personal kind of one-to-one basis, identifying what someone's potential could be and helping them realize it. And I think that my juniors doing really well in their careers, whether it's at Four or elsewhere, is something that I'm really proud of. And I suppose my one example of this would be Sophie McCrow, who is our strategy director. She was my first grad. So seeing her being promoted into that role, that was, obviously all of her own doing, but it's with the tools that I had given her over the years that we worked together, was probably one of my proudest achievements.
Wow. Again, I think one thing you told me about this, and also one thing I've realized is how the impact you've made over those years, it can certainly pay off. And again, Sophie is definitely such an inspiration for so many of us because of how, like you said, she became the strategy director and pretty much created her own team like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think that's what I think that's what things that I'm proud of. Again, campaigns, they come and go, but those kind of real life impacts that you make are the things that make me really proud.
That's awesome. Now, moving on. So we've talked a lot about your, like your earlier stage of your career. So let's go to maybe the later or recent stages now, and let's touch
Mhm.
on, for example, COVID-19, which has
Yeah.
obviously shifted the way a lot of us now work, with flexible working and using Zoom now. How has COVID-19 changed the way you work in particular?
I think the flexible working, I learnt the hard way. I was very much a in the office type of person. So having to engage with my staff, my clients remotely was so difficult for me. Pitching online, that was just, that I'm 6'1", I'm a tall woman. I have presence. So not being able to come in and actually deliver a pitch physically by being in the room was such a learning curve for me. But I absolutely love the flexibility that we now have in our ways of working. Obviously, I'd love for more in-person contact with staff and clients and our suppliers, but it's now become very task focused and about getting the task done. What we've done away with is this presenteeism. So people coming into the office doing long hours just to show that they're busy. Now we're measuring people's output based on the tasks that they achieve. And it allows me to do the tasks in my own time at my own pace, which I think is a huge, huge benefit to the way that we work now.
First of all, I cannot imagine how it felt like working, at for about, let's say 13, 14 years right before COVID hit, and having to
Yeah.
go to the office every day, 5 days a week, and then just, all of a sudden be thrown into this random work environment where you have to just now do everything online.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine how that must have felt for you.
Yeah, but and the thing is I've got the benefit of knowing how it is both ways. But there's junior staff like yourself starting their careers where there's this hybrid working, and some of it is online, some of it is in the office, and I think I understand the benefits of both, and I know which tasks I will complete and achieve better at home or in the office. But having to educate people who have never worked in an office the benefits of working in an office is a real challenge. And I don't know, maybe you can help us tackle that as someone that loves to come into the office. How do we get more people into the office?
Someone told me definitely as a first job, first of all, come into the office as much as you can. And that's pretty much what I did the first 3 weeks. But then I also realized at a time I wanted to try the whole flexible work policy, because again, it's just amazing how much the world's just changed now. And, 5 years ago, I would have never expected that to happen, where we are now working, 3 days at home or 2 days at home, 3 days in the office, 2 days in the office. And it's like, I can't imagine then what's going to happen in the next 5 years and onwards. You just don't
Mm-hmm.
know. And that's the most interesting part of it, would you say?
It is. It is. And different. And I think that we are unique in our offer. I think we're much more flexible than a lot of companies, and it is attracting more talent. So some people really want that flexibility. But personally, I'd love to have more dedicated office time for learning and on-the-job learning opportunities, and to get that kind of culture back that I mentioned at the start of, to get people inspired by seeing other people in brainstorms. I mean, when was that's unheard of, to have an in-person real life brainstorm. You don't have that kind of creative ideas bouncing on that you would get on Zoom. People hide behind the computer and the camera, and I don't know. I don't know what the future is. I think it's going to be an ongoing challenge for us to tackle, but we have to. Yeah, I think we need to allow people to make the most of it, but also try and get back that for entrepreneurial culture and the energy back of collaboration in person.
I'm sure over time it'll happen. And again, I think one thing, by taking it step at a time, more people are now starting to come back to the office, even at 4. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
compared to, I'm sure, during COVID time. But again, it's kind of a way of, it's a new normal, but things are happening. It's just taking a matter of time.
Mm, But
Yeah.
I appreciate you leading by example. I think that's great. Coming in and I think that's what it takes, is that other people will be encouraged to come in. So and you have friends or colleagues that you speak with and sit with from different parts of the team, and I think that's also brilliant. Part of the company. I think that's what really will drive that spark and that innovation and that integration that we really want from our business.
Oh yeah, totally. And I think a lot of those things will actually come to play in the future, and I can just see it all working out. I just like to be positive.
Yeah, great. Me too.
So now, after we talked about COVID, and like you said earlier, that you are now a mother. And again, there was something I was going to ask earlier, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to bring that in. So you're now a mother and you're the
Mhm.
chief executive of media. How do you deal with burnout?
Gosh, I think that you've got to look after yourself. So you can't burn. It's inevitable through, lack of sleep, long days, wanting to deliver for the business, but also wanting to deliver at home as well. It's inevitable that you're going to be exhausted. But my one, I'm not saying that I'm perfect at this, but one thing that I'm trying to do, and I would recommend to other working parents or anyone that's juggling the work life balance for whatever reason, is being in the moment. If you're working, you're working. You don't try and multitask and have your phone and try and be answering home related questions or whatnot. Is you're in a work mindset and you're super focused. And then at home, the work phone gets put and you're with your family and just trying to create that distinction between work and home, because I think it makes that attention to the moment and whether you're at work or at home, I think is can help you deal with burnout a bit better, because there are some boundaries, I suppose. Um, and this is coming from someone who prides themselves or has been very proud of the fact that I'm, available 24/7 for my staff and clients. I'm always on. I'm always thinking about my clients' strategies, campaign work, results, outputs, what's happening in their business, what have I missed? Is there anything else that I can do? This is a constant, that I'm very used to thinking like that. And so it's a process, and I'm still kind of trying to create those more distinctive boundaries. But that's what I'm striving towards, and I think that's the best way of making sure that you don't have a negative impact on either your work or home life. Is by having those distinctive areas of your brain where you're either engaged at home or engaged in the office. Um, so that would be my recommendation, but it's difficult. It's difficult, and I have uttermost respect for mothers who've been doing it, and fathers who've been doing this juggle for longer than I have.
I definitely felt your passion there. Not just about the job, but also just being a mother. And I just feel how passionate you are about what you do. It's just, you're so aware and so alert about everyone. It's almost like someone like me as well. Sometimes I'll put people before me just because I kind of want them to, I just want to help them as well before I do something on my own. Do you feel that as well?
Yeah, I think I know what you mean. That solving's yeah, but yeah, you have to be kinder to yourself. But that's probably just in your nature, isn't it? That's to help someone solve their challenges or their work problems first, and then but you get told on an aeroplane to put not your gas mask, your oxygen mask. That's it, your oxygen mask on first before um, putting on your children's. So just remember that analogy. So make sure you can't help anyone else if you're not well yourself. And you must be kind on yourself. I mean, it's setting high expectations is obviously, what gets you through your career progression. But I think as long as you're trying and you're contributing, yeah, as long as you're learning, contributing, yeah, I think don't be yeah, reward yourself with some looking after yourself, some self-care.
I totally agree on that because it's something a lot of us don't really pay attention to or don't really recognize. This is now going to be my second last question on how, since you become a mom, how has that been in terms of work? Do you have like a new appreciation of, I guess, working moms? How does that make you feel?
Yeah, yeah. As I totally do, and I think I'm more aware of the demands on other people's lives than I was before. I think I was very much because I wanted the output that was in the interest of the agency, in the interest of our clients, but I'm much more aware of the dimensions of what it takes to deliver those outputs now, and what might be going on in other people's lives. But what I've learned firsthand is that you just become hyper focused on the tasks that you're working on, and if you have that kind of separation and those boundaries, you can be much more effective as well. I definitely have less opportunity to procrastinate, and I have to really focus on tasks, and I have to zoom out of one area and zoom into others, and I do that at a pace because of the time pressures that I have on my day. I do it at a pace that I didn't do before. I definitely did it in a much more leisurely fashion, which meant I just worked longer hours, but I got the job done, and I really enjoyed it. It's just now that I'm having to do it at a much faster pace, so I'm aware of that. Yeah, no, but I appreciate that newfound kind of understanding and awareness and knowledge. I think it makes for a more rounded kind of chief executive. Otherwise, I was very tunnel vision and just focusing on my lane. Now I'm very appreciative of what everyone else has got going on.
I really like how self-aware you are. And now that I think we've all just become so much more aware, maybe since COVID-19 or in general, just more about, what people are going through, or also just mental health, or in general, we kind of have this appreciation for everyone. And that, again, it's for everyone. I'm just proud of you in a way, and everyone should be proud of themselves.
Yeah,
in a
but
way.
never stop learning. I think that's one thing that I would say, is that it's really important that this is something I've recently learned. I probably have another blind spot that I'm not aware of. So I'm aware, but I don't know what I don't know. So I need to continue to expand my professional kind of awareness to make sure that I'm not overlooking a different part of my the way that I work, for example.
Oh yeah. And again, I think it's also just a matter of whether, if you realize it now or later, there'll be a time when eventually we'll realize it, and I guess just keep going at this point.
Yeah.
Now, the last question I wanted to ask is, if you had to give one piece of advice to someone, it could be me, it could be anyone who is just starting their career, or someone who is in the middle of their career and trying to get up the career ladder, what would you say?
I would say, and I think I touched on a number of these things in this session, but if I was to summarize it, it would be to cultivate a growth mentality. Is think about how you can make the most of the challenges that come your way. Think about how you expand your professional acumen and how you expand your network. Because keep thinking about what's next, and I think it's best summarized in this like growth mentality. So network, be a fierce networker, embrace the challenges, put yourself forward, continue learning.
I'm going to write some notes on that later, just to keep it
and stay curious. That's the thing, is that if you keep asking but why and how, and I think that curiosity is a good kind of tip as well, in a positive way.
That's a great piece of advice. Cool. Anyways, thank you so much for joining us here today, Tonia. It was such a pleasure to, first of all, get the chance to interview you and learn a lot more about you. And again, I've learned a lot about you, and just more about, people who have been there, from a grad to a chief executive in that position. And it's really, really reassuring, and just gives me a sense of hope, and just goes to show that, it's a journey. You've been there, you're still on that, going up, and I'm excited to see what you do as well.
Thank you, Manav. You're going to be great.
Thank you. And if people want to get in touch with you, how could they get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can email me at tonia.savchenko@4.agency, or just connect with me on LinkedIn.
Cool. I'll attach them below if people are watching this on YouTube. And for people who are watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and stay tuned for the next episode coming up very soon. Take care. Thanks, Tonia.
Thank you.